Sarah clutched the frayed strap of her duffel bag, the thin nylon digging into her palm. The chaotic noise of LaGuardia's Terminal C was a dull roar compared to the frantic pounding in her chest. 7 months pregnant, exhausted, and running on fumes. This flight wasn't just a flight, it was an escape route. It was the last $150 she had in the world, scraped together from pawned jewelry and returned cans to buy a one-way ticket to Portland, Oregon. Her sister Emily, no, her estranged sister Emily, had finally answered the phone last night. The voice was cold, clipped, but it hadn't been a no. "If you can get here, Sarah, you can stay in the spare room, but don't bring your drama." The drama had a name. Greg. The man who had promised her the world and given her a broken wrist, empty bank accounts, and the child now growing under her heart. She'd spent the last 3 nights in a women's shelter after finally getting the courage to run while he was passed out. Her clothes were from the donation bin, scrubbed clean in the shelter's industrial sink, but they still looked worn. She was painfully aware of her appearance, the oversized men's coat that barely buttoned over her stomach, the sneakers with the soles flapping. She just needed to get past the gate. She had to. If she missed this flight, Greg would find her. He always found her. The boarding call for Flight 214 to Portland echoed, and she shuffled into Zone 5, keeping her head down, avoiding eye contact, praying for invisibility. She reached the gate, where a flight attendant with a name tag reading Brenda offered a smile as sharp and synthetic as her lacquered nails. Brenda's eyes scanned Sarah's e-ticket, then travelled up, slowly, deliberately taking in the coat, the belly, the pale, freckled face, and the reddish-brown hair matted from a restless night. The smile faltered, replaced by a mask of polite disgust. "Ma'am, where is your luggage?" Brenda asked, her voice loud enough for the people nearby to hear. Sarah flinched, pulling the duffel bag closer. This is all I have," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Brenda's nostrils flared just slightly. "I see." She tapped her pen on the podium, a rhythmic click, click, click that sounded like a timer counting down. "We do have a standard of dress and hygiene for our passengers. I'm already getting complaints from the first-class passengers who had to walk past you." Sarah's face burned hot with shame. "Complaints? I haven't even— The smell, ma'am. It's noticeable." Brenda cut her off, her voice dripping with condescension. "We can't have you making other paying customers uncomfortable for a 6-hour flight. It's unsanitary, especially in your condition." This was it, the nightmare she had feared. I showered this morning at the shelter. I promise I don't—" Tears of pure, hot humiliation sprang to her eyes, blurring the smug face in front of her. "Please, I have to be on this flight. My sister is waiting for me. It's an emergency." Brenda leaned in, dropping the polite pretense. Her voice was a venomous hiss, meant only for Sarah. "Listen, sweetheart, I don't know what kind of scam you're pulling or if you're high, but this isn't a Greyhound bus. You are clearly not well. You're a liability." She straightened up, her customer service smile snapping back into place as she addressed the line. "Apologies for the delay, folks. We're just handling a small security matter." She looked back at Sarah, her eyes cold. "I am denying you boarding. You'll have to speak to customer service back at the main terminal." "No, you can't! Please!" Sarah's voice cracked. The desperation was bubbling over, turning into panic. "You don't understand. I have nowhere else to go. He'll find me. Please!" A businessman in a crisp suit behind her huffed impatiently. "Jesus, just get her out of here already. Some of us have connections to make." Brenda signaled to a gate agent. "Call security. This person is causing a disturbance and refuses to leave." As Sarah began to sob, the helplessness swallowing her whole, a heavy door clicked open. The sound cut through the tension. From the jet bridge, a man in a crisp white pilot's uniform emerged, clipboard in hand. "Brenda, what's the hold-up? We're 10 minutes from pushback and the cabin isn't—" He stopped. His eyes moved from Brenda's smug, triumphant expression to the crying, pregnant woman she was shooing away like an animal. He looked at her face, pale and streaked with tears, her worn-out coat. The clipboard slipped from his grasp and clattered loudly on the floor. The color drained from his face, leaving him ghost white. "Oh my God," he breathed, his voice catching. Brenda turned, her annoyance flashing. "Captain Hayes, I'm handling this. This woman is unwell, and I've denied her boarding. Security is on the way." "Sarah," the pilot whispered, taking a step forward, ignoring his flight attendant completely. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Sarah, is that you?" Sarah looked up, her vision blurred by tears. She saw the uniform, the captain's bars, and then the face. The face she hadn't seen in 5 years. The face of the brother who had warned her, the brother she had screamed at and pushed away, the brother she hadn't spoken to since she'd chosen Greg over her own family. "Mark!" she whimpered, before her legs finally gave out and she crumpled to the floor. Mark Hayes didn't just see his sister, he saw the ghost of the girl he'd failed. The confident, fiery artist who had told him to live his own life was gone, replaced by this skeletal, haunted woman, drowning in a coat that wasn't hers. "Sarah!" he shouted, shoving past the stunned gate agent and dropping to his knees. The floor was cold, but all he could feel was the terrifying fragility of his sister's body as he pulled her into his arms. She was light, far too light, even pregnant. "I'm here, sir. It's me. I've got you." He cradled her head against his chest, his mind racing, trying to connect the vibrant memory of 5 years ago with the devastating reality in his arms. He was a pilot, a man trained for 1,000 different emergencies, but in that second, his carefully constructed world of checklists and procedures disintegrated. This was blood. This was family. Brenda, seeing her authority, the entire gate, and possibly her career evaporating, hurried over, her voice high and defensive. "Captain, I had no idea. She was incoherent. I was following protocol for a disruptive passenger. Mark's head snapped up. The look in his eyes was not one of a colleague. It was pure, unadulterated fury. "Protocol!" His voice was a low growl that vibrated with menace. "You call this protocol, Brenda? You humiliated my sister. You... He bit back the words, the professional part of his brain screaming at him, but the brother won. "Get me a wheelchair, now, and get our station manager down here. You will not speak another word to her. Do you understand me?" He didn't wait for an answer. He looked at the other flight attendant, a younger woman with wide, terrified eyes. "Get on the horn with operations. Tell them I'm declaring a personal emergency. I need a replacement captain for 214, immediately." But he scooped Sarah up, his captain's jacket already off, and draped around her thin shoulders, covering the worn-out clothes. He carried her down the jet bridge, past the staring, silent passengers in first class, and into the forward galley. He sat her down on one of the crew jump seats and knelt in front of her, ignoring the chaos he had just unleashed. "Sarah, look at me." Her eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, finally focused on his. "Mark. Oh, God. Mark. He's going to find me. He said he'd kill me if I left. He'll... Who, Sarah? Who?" Mark gripped her hands, his knuckles white. "Greg." She choked out the name like it was poison. It was Greg. The name hit Mark like a physical blow. Greg, the charming, fast-talking real estate investor who had swept Sarah off her feet. The man who had methodically and cruelly isolated her from her entire family. Mark had seen the possessiveness, the flashes of temper, and had warned her. His warning and her defensive, "You're just jealous," had been their last conversation. 5 years of silence had followed, 5 years where this monster had done... What? He looked at the yellow-green bruise fading on her temple, partially hidden by her matted hair. He looked at the way she cringed when he moved too fast. He hit you, Mark stated. It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. Sarah's dam of shame finally broke. The story poured out of her in a torrent of gasping sobs and fragmented sentences right there in the galley of the Airbus A321. She told him everything. She told him how, at first, Greg's possessiveness had felt like love, like protection. Then it became control. He'd handled her finances, making her quit her graphic design job, telling her she was too talented to work for anyone but herself. Then her phone would accidentally break, and the new one he bought her only had his number in it. He'd moved them from her apartment in Brooklyn to a place in Queens he'd secured, a place where the neighbors kept to themselves. The first time he'd pushed her, he had cried afterward, blaming the stress of a bad deal, and she had comforted him. The first time he'd slapped her, he'd locked her in the apartment for 2 days until the swelling went down. And when he returned, he brought flowers and a story about how she'd made him do it. She told him about the baby, how she'd been terrified to tell him, and how when she did, he'd smiled. A family, he'd said. But the violence only escalated, becoming more calculated. You can't run now, he'd whisper after. Who would want you broken and pregnant? She'd finally run 3 nights ago, after he'd thrown a lamp at her and missed, the sound of it shattering against the wall, finally breaking the spell. She'd grabbed her old duffel bag, the only thing she had left of her old life, and run to the nearest precinct, who directed her to the shelter. The flight to Portland was a desperate last-ditch attempt to get to Emily, the only other family she had left. I didn't know who else to call, Mark, she wept, clutching his jacket. You were a captain. You were flying all over the world. I was so ashamed. I let him do this. I let him break me. Mark Hayes's heart, which had been in his throat, now felt like it had dropped into his stomach and shattered. The guilt was a physical, suffocating weight. While he was worrying about fuel margins and weather patterns, his little sister was in a war zone, just 10 miles from his own apartment. He had been angry for 5 years, angry at her for cutting him off. Now, all he felt was a profound, bottomless rage directed at one man, and an equally profound self-loathing. You didn't let him do anything, Sar, he said, his voice thick. He's a predator. I should have done more. I should have come for you. I should have broken down his door. No, she whispered, her hand finding his. You tried. I was the one who didn't listen. I'm so sorry. He put his hand over hers, pressing her palm to his cheek. We're not doing this. We're not blaming ourselves, not anymore. This ends today. The station manager, a flustered man named Jim, appeared at the galley curtain. Mark, what's going on? Brenda is distraught. She says, Jim, Mark cut him off, standing up to his full height, his captain's authority returning like a suit of armor. Brenda is suspended, pending a full investigation. I want her nowhere near a uniform until I've spoken to HR and the ethics board. She denied boarding to my sister, who is pregnant and a victim of severe domestic violence. She humiliated her in front of a full gate. End of story. Jim's face went pale. Your sister. Oh my God. Okay, Mark, okay, the replacement pilot is on his way. ETA 20 minutes. What about her? He gestured to Sarah. Mark looked at Sarah, who was watching him with a fragile, terrified hope. He made the decision in that instant. She's not flying to Portland, he said. She's not going anywhere. He turned to Sarah. I mean, she's not going anywhere without me. You're not going to Emily's. You're coming home with me. I have a 2-bedroom apartment in Astoria. It's quiet. It's safe. There's a doorman. We'll figure out the rest. We'll get a lawyer. We'll get a restraining order. We'll get you a doctor. But you are not going to be alone for one more second." Sarah stared at him, the words not quite processing. "Home? With you?" "Yes, with me. I'm so sorry I wasn't there before, sir, but I am here now. I'm not letting you go." He pulled out his phone and made another call, his voice dropping. "Yeah, I need a car service at C22, arrivals level, a black SUV, and get me the number for the best family law attorney you know. Yes, right now." He hung up and offered his hand to Sarah. "Let's get you out of here." He grabbed her small duffel bag, his heart clenching at how light it was. He led her out of the galley. The passengers in first class, who had heard snippets, averted their eyes, their expressions a mix of pity and shame. The businessman who had complained was staring intently at his laptop, his face crimson. As they reached the open aircraft door, Brenda was there, flanked by the station manager. She was crying now, her mascara running. "Captain Hayes, Mark, please, I didn't know. If I had known." Mark Hayes didn't slow down. He put his arm protectively around Sarah's waist and guided her past the flight attendant as if she were a ghost, his eyes fixed on the end of the jet bridge. He didn't look at her. He didn't say a word. The only sound was Sarah's quiet, shuddering breaths as he led her step by step away from the flight she was supposed to take and toward the life that had just been given back to her. We all know that moment, the instant a terrible situation finally turns around. Sarah is safe, for now. But as they walk into the terminal, the person who did this to her is still out there, and a new life is on the way. The scars on the inside are so much harder to heal than the ones we can see. This community is all about stories of resilience, about finding the light after walking through unimaginable darkness. If you want to follow Sarah on her journey to reclaim her life and see her find the strength she never knew she had, make sure you're subscribed and have clicked that notification bell. We're in this with her now, and before we get to the next part of her story, we want to hear from you. We've all been judged unfairly by someone who didn't know our story. In the comments, tell us about a time you were completely misunderstood by a stranger. What did they get wrong about you, and what do you wish you could have told them in that moment? Let's talk about it. The ride from LaGuardia to Astoria was a blur of muted colors and muffled sounds. Sarah sat in the back of the plush black SUV that Mark had summoned, his captain's jacket still wrapped around her like a shield. She felt disconnected from her own body, a ghost watching a movie of her own life. Mark sat beside her, not crowding her, but his presence was a solid, warm wall. He spent most of the ride on the phone, his voice low and clipped, stripped of all emotion, becoming the pilot, the man in charge. "I need a wellness check at this address." "Yes, for a Greg Miller. I have reason to believe he is a danger to himself or others. I also need to file an immediate emergency order of protection for Sarah Hayes." "That's correct, Hayes, my sister." He rattled off details, coordinates in a flight plan to save her life. Sarah just stared at her own hands, chapped and raw, resting on the clean, expensive leather. She had forgotten what it felt like to be safe. She had forgotten what it felt like to not be afraid. When they arrived at his building, a pre-war brick tower with a uniformed doorman who greeted Mark by name, she flinched, expecting to be turned away. But Mark just put a steady hand on her back and guided her through the marble lobby into the elevator and down a quiet, carpeted hall. His apartment was clean, spare, and filled with sunlight. It smelled like coffee and sandalwood. It was the quietest place she had been in years. "The guest room is this way," he said gently. The bathroom is attached. There's a new toothbrush and, well, you can use whatever you need. I don't have a lot of women's clothes." "It's okay," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Mark, later, sir. Just rest. The door locks. You're safe, I promise." She locked the door, turned on the shower, and stood under the scalding water until her skin was red, trying to wash off the last 3 years. She tried to wash off the shelter, the airport, the look in Brenda's eyes, the touch of Greg's hands. She put on a soft t-shirt and sweatpants Mark had left for her, climbed into a bed with sheets so clean they felt like silk, and for the first time in 1,095 days, she fell asleep without fear. While she slept, Mark dismantled her old life. He and a lawyer had her name removed from the lease she shared with Greg. He had the restraining order served. He called their sister, Emily, in Portland, a conversation that started with, "You won't believe this," and ended with Emily sobbing, booking a flight to New York. He sat in his living room, watching the sun go down, and for the first time in 5 years, he cried. The climax didn't come with a bang. It came with a whimper. 4 days later, Sarah, flanked by Mark and Emily, was leaving her first prenatal appointment. The doctor, a kind woman Mark knew, had assured them the baby was small but strong. For the first time, Sarah had felt a flicker of hope, of actual excitement. As they walked out into the bright afternoon, a voice cut through the street noise. "Sarah, baby, oh my God, I've been looking everywhere for you." Greg. He stood 20 feet away, his hair messy, his eyes wild and red-rimmed. He looked pathetic. He looked terrified. "Baby, what? What are you doing with him? He's trying to turn you against me, isn't he, after he abandoned you? Come home, Sarah, please. I can't live without you. I'm sorry. I'll get help." Sarah froze, her hand flying to her belly, her breath seizing in her chest. All the old terror, the learned instinct to appease him, flooded her. She took a step back, right into Mark. "It's okay," Mark said, his voice low and steady, not for Greg, but for her. He stepped in front of her and Emily, a human shield. "Greg, you've been served. You are in violation of a restraining order. Leave now." Greg's mask of contrition vanished, replaced by the ugly, familiar rage. You did this! You poisoned her! She's my family! That baby is mine!" He lunged, not at Mark, but at the space beside him, trying to get to Sarah. But Mark was faster. He wasn't a brawler, but he was a brother. He met Greg's lunge with a solid shove, sending him staggering back. "You will not touch her ever again." As Greg regained his balance, 2 uniformed officers, part of a plainclothes detail Mark had hired to follow them to the appointment, grabbed him from behind. It was over in seconds. Greg didn't fight. He just crumpled, the bravado gone, replaced by the pathetic, sniveling man he truly was. "Sarah, tell them you love me," he screamed as they cuffed him. Sarah just watched, tears streaming down her face, but she didn't move. She didn't cower. She just watched him get put in the car, a ghost finally being exorcised. 6 months later, the nursery in Mark's apartment was painted a soft, hopeful green. Sarah, her face full and glowing, sat in a rocking chair nursing her daughter, a tiny, perfect baby girl named Grace. Mark, home on a 3-day layover, leaned against the doorframe, a smile on his face he couldn't have faked. "She looks like you know," Mark said quietly. "She's got your red hair." Sarah looked up, her own smile bright. "She's got your stubbornness." She traced the baby's eyebrow. "I got a call from the airline's ethics board today. They wanted my official statement. They told me Brenda was terminated. For everything." "That's good," Mark said, nodding. "It's justice." "Is it?" Sarah said, looking out the window at the city. I just feel sad for her." She looked at me and saw one thing. She saw less than. She didn't see a person. She didn't see a sister or a mother. She just saw dirt. She looked down at Grace. "I was so busy trying to get to Portland, thinking Emily would save me. But this baby, she needed me to save her. And you saved us both. You saw me, Mark. When I was invisible, you saw me." Mark walked over and knelt by the chair. He put his hand over hers, his fingers covering his sister's and his niece's. "I almost didn't," he whispered, his voice thick with the memory of that day. "I almost let my pride, my anger keep me from you for the rest of my life. You saved me too, Sar." Sarah leaned her head against her brother's. Their two worlds, once separated by anger and miles, now orbiting this tiny, new life. The flight that day had been grounded, but her life had finally taken off. Thank you so much for being with us for Sarah's story. It's stories like these that remind us to look past the surface and to see the person, not the circumstance. We're so grateful to have you as part of this community, a place where we can share these powerful moments. If you haven't already, we'd love for you to subscribe and stay with us for more stories that touch the heart. We know that so many of you have your own stories of being rescued or of being the rescuer. This comment section is a safe place. If you feel comfortable, tell us about a time in your life when someone saw you when no one else did. Or a time you were able to do that for someone else. Did you enjoy Sarah's journey? And what's the biggest lesson you're taking away from what she and Mark went through? We look forward to reading every single one of your thoughts. We'll see you in the next story.